Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our next installment in the Private Pilot Online Ground School. My name is Micah Small. I'm your CFI, guiding you through communication, light signals, and runway lighting this trip. Shouldn't be too long of a presentation, and then we'll be able to skip to the next lesson. So starting out, let's talk about what? Communication between the pilot and different air traffic controllers throughout the phases of flight. Light gun signals are a means of communicating with the pilot in case the radio comm is unavailable. Why? Because communication is a critical link in the ATC system. Operating in and out of controlled airport as well as much of the national airspace system requires two-way radio communications, and then understanding proper radio comms procedures strengthens the link and makes flying safer and actually more fun for everyone. So the content in this lesson is going to be radio communications, air traffic control clearances and instructions, selecting frequencies, radar assistance, transponders, ATC light gun signals, and runway status lights. So jumping right in, our understanding, that's the most important part of the pilot controller communication. So clear and concise phraseology and terminology is what we want to use, okay? Brevity is important, but understanding is more important. If you don't understand, clarify. Ask them, hey, could you repeat that? Or let them know if you don't understand, okay? Acknowledge each radio call with your call sign, okay? And then reference the pilot controller glossary that you can look up, and you can find the FAA's pilot controller glossary. So technique and format. We like to keep things standard in aviation just so everybody does it the same, so it's easy to understand and it's clear and concise. So listen and think before transmitting. Know what you want to say before you hit that mic key. We've all done the thing where we've pushed the button and it shuts off our brain. So we just try to be mindful of that and be smart. And then be alert to other radio calls or a lack of radio calls, and keep your eyes outside the aircraft as well. So radio call format is who, where, what. Who you are, who you're calling, where you are, and what you want. Okay. And an uncontrolled field is who you're calling, who you are, what you're calling, and then who you're calling again at the very end. So, for instance, if you're in an uncontrolled field, it would be Aberdeen traffic, Cherokee 05 Tango, 5 miles south of the field, planning 31, full stop, Aberdeen traffic. Okay, so it's very, very exact on how we do that. And if you're calling air traffic control, it'd be like Minneapolis Center, Cherokee, November 5205 Tango, 5 miles south, Aberdeen with request. And then they'll come back at you and acknowledge you. So it's always kind of that same format. All right, when you're getting an authorization or a clearance from air traffic control, you always want to read back, record it, write it down, and read back the clearance. So always read back the numbers like altitude assignments, vectors, or runway assignments, taxi instructions, runway assignment, clearance to enter, runway, hold short, line up, wait, and then land and hold short operations. But always read it back exactly how they told you, and then you'll get a read back correct from them if you know you're good to go. So for clearances, AIM 4-4-1, you can look that up. And then also in the FARS 91.3 Alpha, the PIC is directly responsible for and the final authority to the operation of the aircraft. So that's a fancy way of the FAA saying, hey, the PIC is in charge, and they're the no-go decision. Okay. If a clearance deviates from a rule or puts the aircraft in jeopardy, it is the pilot's responsibility to request an amended clearance. Again, PIC is in charge. If a pilot prefers to follow a different course of action, they are expected to inform ATC accordingly. Usually we'll just use a word like unable. So, for instance, myself and another pilot were flying to Montana about a year ago in a twin engine over the mountains, but it was a twin engine piston non-turboed aircraft. Things you might understand now, but in a year or so you'll understand them. But so we are in an aircraft that's not capable of going really high in altitude, and they asked us to go to like 15,000 feet, and we just said unable because our service ceiling was going to be right around that 11 to 12,000 mark. So we knew that the airplane wasn't capable of it, so we told them unable, and they gave us an amended clearance for our route. Okay, so be clear and communicate with them. Let them know what you can and can't do and what your airplane can and can't do based on your minimum, personal minimums, okay, which you'll also learn about here. So that's then again in the FAR 91.123, no pilot may deviate from a clearance unless an amended clearance is obtained or an emergency exists or it is in response to a traffic alert and collision avoidance system or resolution. So you have to follow their rules, but if it's an emergency, you go ahead and deviate, and then you might just have to answer some questions on why you deviated. But if it was an emergency to preserve life and aircraft, you're not going to be in serious trouble for that. You just might have to explain it. All right, so ATC clearances and instructions again. Now, declaring an emergency is another one we need to talk about. So the AIM 6-1-2, an emergency can either be a distress or urgency condition. So distress is threatened by serious or imminent danger and requires immediate assistance. Urgency is concerned about safety and requires a timely but not an immediate assistance, okay? Big one is do not hesitate to declare an emergency when faced with distress conditions. So fire, mechanical failure, structural damage, anything like that. Go ahead and declare. It's not going to hurt you to declare, and then you'll have the help and the clearances and everything that you need and priority that you need to be able to safely carry out that mission. Okay. And at least an urgency condition when doubtful about position, fuel, weather, or anything that could adversely affect safety if it stacks up. But just notice that when you get to that urgent situation, it can snowball quickly. So that might be the time to start asking for help. And the biggest thing is we just have to admit and then take the guidance, take the help, because it's all about safety of life and limb. Okay. So now the selection and use of frequencies. So we need to know the purpose of each controller and frequency and when to use it. So in our pre-flight planning, we're going to look up and record the frequencies you expect to use for weather, for clearance, ATIS is weather, for weather, clearance delivery, ground tower departure, etc. On the chart supplement and the sectional charts, for-flight airport diagram, we just need to know how to get those things from there. So like on a for-flight, you could just click on the airport and it'll pull up all that information for you. And on the charts, where to find it. And we'll go through that in the chart planning, in the cross-country planning stages as well, so you'll know how to get those numbers from a chart, okay? In flight, just make sure you're organized and you're prepared, and we say always fly first, but it's always aviate, navigate, communicate. That is going to be something you're going to hear a lot through this training course, and every other training course you do in aviation, truthfully, is going to be aviate, navigate, communicate. You got to fly that plane first. Keep it upright and stable, okay? Use all available resources to find the frequencies needed. So whether it's a chart supplement, a sectional chart, for-flight, air traffic control, worst case scenario, Google on your phone if that's all you got. Any resource you have available to get you the information you need, that is what we want to be using. So to get radar assistance, the requirements and limitations there. First off, the requirement, you have to be able to communicate with air traffic control. Secondly, you have to be within radar coverage. And third, they have to be able to identify you on the radar. Okay, so you got to have the transponder that you can put a discrete code in as well. So the limitations there, that's based on that controller discretion. And basically what that means is if they're overwhelmed with their IFR filed traffic or their instrument traffic, they might not have time to take you on, and they will let you know that they can't fulfill your request, okay? The guidance information from them is advisory, okay? It is not a cleared path. It is not a IFR flight plan. It is just advisory, and they generally can't, nor can you, determine if their instructions will lead you into IMC. So it is still your responsible as a VFR pilot to see and avoid other aircraft and weather and your cloud clearances and maintain all that stuff, even though you're on a flight following with radar assistance. So just be mindful of that. VFR traffic, no matter what, you are still VFR. So flight following can provide safety alerts, traffic advisories, limited radar vectoring, again, workload permitting for that controller. The TERSA, that's a sequencing and separation for VFR aircraft in a TERSA. They can do that for you, and they will. Again, an example of that is Fargo, North Dakota has a TERSA still active, and they have their own radar there. You will have to talk to tower and approach and all that there, and they will vector you around even as VFR traffic. They might give you the visual to land, but they're still going to kind of tell you sometimes what heading to turn to help separate that traffic, okay? Then the Class Charlie services, separation between IFR and VFR traffic and sequencing of VFR traffic to the airport is likely to happen in those airspace as well. They're not going to let you just go 100% visual in there. They're going to help guide you, okay? And then Class Bravo, Separation is based on IFR, VFR, and or weight and sequencing of VFR arrivals. So Class B is another one where they're going to guide you through everything you need to do there, but you still are responsible everywhere as a VFR pilot to watch for traffic. Even if they're helping separate you, you still have to be mindful and scan outside the aircraft for collision avoidance. So transponders, a little bit about those. Provides aircraft information to air traffic control and also other aircraft now can see the transponder stuff popping up in their avionics in those airplanes. So the transponder codes use radar assistance, and ATC assigns you a unique 4-digit transponder code, 4 numbers from 0 to 7, and combined with radar returns for improved air traffic control information and separation. And the standard codes, VFR is 1200, hijack 7500, lost comms 7600, and general emergencies 7700. So what I like to say for that is we just have to remember VFR is 1200, and then the other side of that I just say, hey, pirates stole my radio. So you get hijacked, that's a pirate, 7500. Your radio is gone, broken, or stolen, 7600, and then any other emergency is 7700. So pilots stole my radio, okay? Transponder modes, we've got Mode A, transmits that 4-digit code, and that's it. Mode C is Mode A plus the air traffic control can see the aircraft's altitude. And then Mode S is Mode C plus sends a variety of information to air traffic control, including other aircraft like the ICAO address, heading speed, and other flight-related data integral to TCAS and ADS-B. So a lot of those sound like fancy terms. You'll actually get more in-depth training as you move forward in your career if you choose to go farther, and some of that stuff will make a lot more sense to you down the road. But for now, we just need to have the basics of it. So let's take a peek at the light gun signals. So if you lost communications, that's a 7600 squawk. So they're going to see that on their information systems there when they're guiding you in, and they're going to have a light gun ready to go for you. So a quick overview of that. There's a few different color patterns for that light gun. You have a steady green, a flashing green, a steady red, a flashing white, or then alternating green and red. So if you are the airport vehicles, we'll see some of these as well sometimes if they need. And it's just a steady green to be cleared to cross, steady red is stop. If you see a flashing red, that's telling them to get off the taxiway or runway. Anytime you get a flashing light, it's going to be returned to starting point on the airport. And then alternating red and green for everyone across the board is exercise extreme caution, okay? If you are on the ground and get a green light, you're cleared for takeoff. A flashing green is cleared for taxi. Steady red is stop. Flashing red again is taxi clear of the runway in use. Flashing white is return to your starting point, okay? If you are in flight, steady green means go ahead and land, you're cleared to land. Flashing green, if you have taken off and you see a flashing green, they're basically telling you to return for landing, or if you ended up circling and they flash a green at you, they're going to tell you return for landing with that flashing green as well. Steady red, give way to the other aircraft and continue circling. Flashing red, airport's unsafe, don't land. White doesn't matter to you, and then the alternating red and green again is exercise extreme caution. So if you want to take a moment to pause the video and jot these down so you can remember them, go ahead. Otherwise, there's all kinds of VFR cheat sheets out there that you can print and keep in your knee board when you're flying to remember them. All right, basics for lost comms, squawk 7600. During the day, acknowledge signals by moving the ailerons or rudder so you can wag your wings. At night, acknowledge by blinking the landing light or navigation lights. And the light signal disadvantages. The big disadvantage, the pilots may not be looking at the tower when the signal is shown. So directions are very limited. Only approval and disapproval of a pilot's anticipated actions can really be communicated. So it is a very stressful situation if you lose your comms. So you got to make sure that you're paying close attention to everything. Okay, if lost comm procedures while you're airborne, if the receiver is inoperative, remain outside the airspace until traffic flow is determined. Report the failure, aircraft type, position, altitude, and intent to land. Enter the pattern, report position, and watch for light gun signals. If you are unable to transmit, follow the previous procedures and make all radio calls just in case, and then air traffic control may ask you to acknowledge their radio calls with an ident. Okay, if you have both receiver and transmitter problems, remain outside the airspace until traffic flow is determined. Enter the pattern, clear aggressively, and watch for light gun signals. And then, if time permits, troubleshoot the situation. Check connections, equipment, volume, frequency settings, etc. Just to make sure that it's not something we bumped or did. We want to go through those checklists if time and conditions permit. So if you lost your comm on the ground before a flight, if the malfunction can't be repaired before the flight, call ATC, request a VFR departure without radio communication. If it happens during the taxi, watch for light signals and monitor the appropriate frequency. If it happens at night, just to get the tower's attention, turn on a landing light and taxi to a safe position so the light is visible to the tower. All right, we'll take a brief look at the runway status lights. An automated system providing direct indication that a runway is safe. Okay, it's installed at several major U.S. airports. Air traffic control and RWSL must agree. Runway entrance lights, or RELs, they're going to be in the pavement. They're red lights, and they are warning an aircraft waiting to cross or enter a runway that there is conflicting traffic. And then you have takeoff hold lights. It's, again, the in-pavement red lights, and they warn the aircraft in a takeoff position that the runway is occupied. So just helping avoid some incursions and different incidents and accidents there. So just something to be familiar with. So the common errors then with comms, light signals, and runway, sometimes it's the use of improper frequencies. It could be improper procedures and phraseology. It could be a failure to acknowledge or properly comply with clearances and instructions, and failure to understand or properly comply with ATC light signals and or runway status lighting systems. That's a fancy way of saying, hey, these are the things that most people make mistakes on, so look the stuff up, read about it, study it, learn it, know it, and try not to be one of those statistics, okay? At this point, again, that's the end of this slideshow, so go ahead and put any questions in the comments or through our website. If I am your CFI in person, ask me the next time you see me. If I'm not, ask your CFI to clarify anything, because we're all about safety. And as always, thanks for tagging along with us on this flight, and be safe out there.